morning to you. Thanks again for taking the part of your Saturday and joining us here on another edition of the Wealth Guardians radio show. I'm your host, Doug Ray, and I really appreciate you being here. Of course, Jeff Brown, known around these parts as JB, is joining me in the studio today. Hey, JB, how's it going?
It's going great. Good morning. Thanks.
Good morning. You got to be excited because NASCAR's back.
I'm excited. We are racing again. Of course, it's kind of one of my passions. I've been doing it a long time and looking forward to the upcoming not only NASCAR season, but the local racing scene, which kicks off here before long at a lot of our local tracks here.
Yeah, and you were telling me that your show actually starts up again in April.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of great entertainment, information about the local racing scene, and we'll let you know more about it as we get closer there.
Sounds good. Folks, before we get started, JB and I want to salute the men and women of our armed forces and our first responders, along with their families, for their sacrifice and service to this community and our country. Thank you so much for what you do for us. Well, for you first-time listeners, my name's Doug Ray, and I'm the founding principal of Ray Financial Group and the Wealth Guardians radio show. You know, if there was a missing fact or a piece of information that was costing you significant amount of money now, or if it could cause a problem or cost you in the future, when would you want to know about it? Today? 5 years from now? Maybe never? If that piece of information was a must-know fact, would you agree that you'd want to know about it prior to making any type of financial decision, especially one that puts money at risk? That's what makes our firm different. We believe in identifying all the facts necessary to make a sound financial decision that's in your best interest before you make that decision. We're an independent financial firm working with pre-retirees and retirees in all of retirement and estate planning areas, and we are fiduciaries, and we have always served our clients in that capacity. The goal of this show is to educate and to inform our listeners of all up-to-date, relevant information and important topics. JB and I look forward to spending the next 30 minutes with you and giving you some solid financial information that I hope will make a difference in your retirement. Before we get going, I've got a surprise for y'all. We have added an addition to our Triad office here. His name is Bryce Payne, and Bryce is going to be another advisor with us and help and support our efforts here in the community. He'll be full-time in our Clemens office, so I want to bring Bryce in and let him say a little hello to you and give you a few minutes of his background. Hey, Bryce, come on in, man.
Good morning, Doug. Thank you for having me. My first time here in the studio with y'all, and appreciate you adding me onto the team. Look forward to spending a good long time with you and the clients and getting to know everybody around the area. What to say about myself? My wife and I just moved down here recently from Asheville. Hated to leave that community, but very excited to move down to this great community as well. My wife's in the medical field here in town, and of course, as you know, I've been doing various tasks in the financial field like this for the last 8 years. Got my start out in Colorado with T. Rowe Price, and then up in Asheville with PNC, and now down here with you. And one of the things that I appreciate the most, which you already mentioned on, is our fiduciary role. Always appreciate being able to look out for the clients, number one, as opposed to what you might see some other types of organizations in this field doing. So look forward to getting to know the clients and helping everybody turn their red lines into green lines at the end of life expectancy.
Hey, I like that little slogan there. So we're glad to have you, Bryce. I'll tell you, you've been with us just barely over a week, and you've already started contributing. So look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's get going on today's show. As we said, there's several things today that can potentially come up during your retirement years that could be a major threat or even possibly destroy your retirement budget and your whole retirement plan. Everybody saves money for retirement, and they try to save enough to get to the point where they can retire. And when that point's reached, they feel they have things worked out and have enough saved for a successful retirement. But then again, there's several things that could come up, and a lot of times they're just not planned for. So things that many people have not heard about or have not considered, and many of these major threats have a pretty good chance of happening to you. So you just want to make sure you think about them and have a spot for them in your retirement. So today, JB and I are going to cover just a few of those potential threats.
All right, Doug. Well, let's go ahead and get the first one out. The first thing that could destroy a retirement budget and a nest egg is overlooking how long you may be in retirement.
And, I think that's something that a lot of people overlook because, it's funny when we do a retirement plan for folks, my goal is to make sure their plan will last them through age 100. And everybody kind of, when I tell them that, they look at me and they either smile or they say some little thing like, well, I'll never make it to 100. But, the fact of the matter is every year this country adds more and more centenarians. And, if you've been a listener to this show for the past 10 or so years, you've heard my Pop-Up stories. Mm-hmm. And, Pop-Up was my wife's grandfather, and he made it to 104. And he was driving right up to 102. In fact, Pop-Up was in retirement almost 40 years. So, folks, honestly, it is not, unbelievable that some of you may actually be in retirement for 30 years. And if that's the case, boy, you got to consider an awful lot of things, especially the effects of inflation on such a retirement and also, Social Security. And speaking of Social Security, all right, so we are doing another one of our famous Social Security workshops on March the 27th and the 29th at 6:30. That's a Tuesday and a Thursday. Again, they'll be out in Clemens at the Broyhill Office and Convention Center. And I say famous because they are starting to get kind of famous. We've been doing this now with about a little over 5 years, and KC does a great job of informing you folks about these workshops. And I got to tell you this. Every single workshop we've ever done, we have found folks that attend that workshop anywhere from 50 to 100 to 150, even sometimes over $200,000
wow.
in extra Social Security benefits that they had no idea about. I'll give you just a quick case study here. I've got a client who attended one of these workshops a couple years ago. Bottom line is he found out that he could get about $100,000 more by filing for a spousal benefit off of his wife's work record. Well, guess what? The time has come for him to do that. Last week, they went down to the Social Security Administration to file because they're supposed to start benefits this coming May. Well, don't you know, they told him he couldn't file that way, that the law had changed a couple years ago. Well, yeah, the law did change a couple years ago, but it also left in place this spousal benefit for them. I reworked his plan for him, and now he's going to go back with that plan in hand, and he's going to ask for a supervisor this time to get his benefits started. So in May, my clients will pick up an extra $2,000 in income from Social Security for the family. To be clear, that is $2,000 a month extra. Now think about it. How would an extra $2,000 look in your budget? Come to our Social Security workshop on March the 27th and the 29th at 6:30 in Clemens. All you got to do is call us, 336-391-3409, to reserve your seat. There is no cost for you, and there's certainly no obligation.
Okay, great, Doug. Well, the next thing that could destroy a retirement budget and nest egg is getting into the nest egg too early or spending too much money early on in retirement years.
Yeah, JB, that's exactly right. We realize that when you retire, you're going to want to do, a lot of those fun things. I mean, after all, that's what you've worked so hard to do. It's why you save so much. And,
right.
We can carve up a retirement life into 3 segments. And, we call them your go-go years, your slow-go years, and your no-go years. But in your go-go years, I want you to have fun. I want you to spend your money. I mean, again, you work for it. It's your money. And if you don't spend it, who's going to get it? Your kids? They're going to spend it. They're going to join the country club. They're going to go on those cruises and stuff that you want to go on. So, but here's the thing. You got to be careful. You just can't go crazy with it. And that's why it's so important for you to have a written retirement income plan, which we do for all of our clients. And all you got to do is just be a little bit careful and just watch what you're doing. All right, JB, what else?
Well, all right, Doug, the next thing that could destroy a retirement budget and nest egg is underestimating how much will be needed for medical expenses and health care in retirement.
That's exactly for sure. You know, we really do underestimate that. In fact, Fidelity, they did a recent survey and it said a couple age 65 will need at least $250,000 more set aside for additional medical expenses. And, you know, I kind of balked at that number when I first saw it, but I'll tell you the truth, the more study I've done on it, I think it's a reasonable expectation because a lot of this is in long-term care and home health care expenses, which most people, unfortunately, don't plan on having. And I think that's an important part of an overall retirement plan. And, you know, we've said many times on this radio program, nowadays it's so much easier to build in long-term care and home health care expenses into your plan than it used to be. The programs are different and they're easier to qualify for. So it's important for you to figure in these extra medical costs in a solid long-term retirement plan. And we can easily get that done for you. Again, call us at 336-391-3409.
All right, Doug. Well, just a reminder, you are listening to the Wealth Guardians radio show, heard locally right here on 94.5 WPTI. We certainly appreciate you being with us. Remember, you can reach Doug at area code 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Or you can visit the website. Go to www.thewealthguardians.com. That's www.thewealthguardians.com. Stay tuned. We've got several more areas to explore that could derail your best retirement plan. So keep it right here on the Wealth Guardian Show on 94.5 WPTI. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardians radio show, where we tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. Today we are discussing many potential retirement risks that many people don't think of or even know about in retirement that could potentially destroy a retirement nest egg or a budget. So you have to be extremely careful of these risks and make sure you consider them and factor them into your planning. All right, Doug, the next one, that's something that happens. It's unfortunate sometimes, but it does happen. And that is a divorce and or a remarriage.
Yeah, JB, it is unfortunate, but it happens more than most people realize at this stage of the game. You know, having been in the business 30 years, I've certainly seen my fair share of it. Mm-hmm. You know, that empty nest, it can present a daunting challenge to many couples, and not all of them survive it. Believe it or not, elderly divorce rates have doubled over the last 25 years.
Really?
And even the best financial retirement plan is unlikely to provide enough funds to support two separate households. You know, when you throw a possible remarriage into that mix, that's even more people to care for in a retirement plan, and that puts a lot of stress on that retirement budget. You know, right now I'm working with a potential client who has gone through a divorce. They've been married for I think it was over 20 some odd years, and bottom line is they ended up getting a divorce about a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years now, and it's still not settled. You know, even in the best circumstances, these things can get messy. They can get bogged down with attorneys and attorney fees and you name it. It's just not a pretty picture. And second marriages, again, even in the best second marriages, you got a lot of issues to deal with. You know, we have firsthand experience with that in our family. My mother-in-law passed away way too early, and my father-in-law met this lady at church, and they got along and ended up getting married. And you know, the two of them were very happy together. But blending families is you know, it can be a chore. So unfortunately, it's an unforeseen circumstance, and you know, you deal with it the best way you can.
Right. Well, okay, the next one, and it's one of the primary causes of retirement nest eggs or budgets running into problems in retirement, and that's not properly adjusting your investment philosophy.
Exactly. You need to adjust your philosophy the closer you get to retirement. You know, the reason is simple math. Here's the thing, folks, and I try to emphasize this to everybody as they go into the retirement stage of their life. Your portfolios for years have been balanced with an eye towards growth, meaning that you have a healthy portion of that portfolio in risk assets such as equities, equity mutual funds, and that kind of thing, and most of the portfolio is geared in order to grow that portfolio to outpace inflation. And as you worked and as you grew older, you were constantly contributing to that portfolio. And when the markets went down, in an odd, funny sort of way, that worked in your behalf, because as you contributed that pay period every month or every biweekly, whatever your pay period was, as the markets went down, that contribution bought more and more shares of that particular fund or stock. And eventually, when the markets went back up, of course, your accounts reflated. And we're talking about dollar cost averaging at this point. So now, when you pass into retirement, you have exited the wealth accumulation stage of life, and you have now gone into the wealth, I call it the wealth preservation and even the wealth distribution phase of life. So now what's going on is you're taking money out of those accounts. And let's say you need $2,000 a month to supplement your retirement account. And if the markets start going down, if your investment philosophy hasn't changed, if you're still overweighted in equities and risk assets, then that $2,000 distribution is going to require the portfolio to sell more and more shares to create the same $2,000. We call this reverse dollar cost averaging. And the worst thing that can happen to a freshly minted retiree is for that scenario to hit in the first 5 years of retirement. That's called the sequence of return risk. So one of the things that we do in our practice is we make sure that folks understand how much risk they're carrying in a portfolio. Can you imagine what it would be like to retire just before 2008?
Wow.
Yeah, and I saw so many people come into my office after listening to this radio program, and they had lost 30 and 40 and 50% of their retirement dollars. And, thankfully, they've made it up since then, but still in all, the devastation it can do to a retirement plan is really, it's mind-boggling.
Right.
So again, moral of that story is to make sure you understand your investment philosophy and the need for it to be changing as you get into the retirement stage of life. All right, let me remind everybody, especially those folks who have just joined us here on the program, we're having another one of our Social Security workshops coming up at the end of the month, March 27th and 29th. It will be 6:30 in the evening. Those are Tuesday and Thursday evenings. It will also be out in Clemens at the Broyhill Office and Convention Center. And as I said before, we've been successfully holding these workshops now for well over 5 years. And in every single workshop, I offer to everyone who attends a Social Security optimization report. And there's no obligation on your part. All you got to do is show up and let me run the report for you. And in almost every single workshop scenario, we have found couples thousands and thousands of dollars more than they ever knew they were entitled to. And I'm not talking a little bit of money. I'm talking in some cases over $150,000 over their life expectancy and extra benefits. And when you marry that into a well-organized retirement income plan, you'll be amazed at how long that will carry you and your spouse through retirement. And I want you to keep one thing in mind. If you're 65 years old and married, then you've got a better than a 60% probability that at least one of you is going to make it into their 90s. So having a solid, well-thought-out Social Security plan married into your retirement plan is a must. So call us at 336-391-3409 and come to one of those workshops on the 27th and the 29th.
All right, Doug. Well, we've got another cause or threat to outliving your money in retirement, and that's not continuing to plan or adjust your retirement planning in retirement.
That's exactly the case. So many people, first off, a lot of folks don't even have a plan to begin with.
Right.
And then when they do, if they do get a plan, it's important to maintain that plan and keep it up. I tell every client or potential client that comes to see me, we're going to meet at a minimum face to face in the office once a year at a minimum. Now, we can meet more than that, and I've got plenty of clients that do want to meet more than that, and that's fine. But the reason we meet at a minimum is because things change in your life. And these plans we put together, although I think I use some of the best software in the business, and it doesn't matter what software you use to do the planning on, they're all the same. They all have the same Achilles heel, if you will. They compute everything in a straight line fashion. The inflation rate's the same. That can be adjusted, but rate of return's the same. Bottom line is this. Your life isn't linear. Things will change. And we got to make sure that your retirement plan will be able to meet the challenge of those changes. I'll give you a prime example. I do this a lot because this happens occasionally. Several years ago, I had clients that did the planning process with us. They retired successfully, intended to stay in the Winston-Salem area. And then a couple years later, they come in and they say, hey, we decided to move to Florida to be closer to the kids. Well, we had to make sure that their plan could accommodate that move and that change. And sure enough, it worked out well for them. So make sure you continue your planning.
Okay, Doug, the next threat that must be considered is the possibility of having to care for elderly parents, and that's something that's coming up for me. So this is very important.
A lot of us, JB, it's we're kind of called the sandwich generation, I guess.
Right.
Around 34 million Americans cared for older parents or relatives in 2015. So we do see that happening a lot. Mm-hmm. And their family, you got to take care of them.
Sure.
In our family, both of our dads, they're in their 80s and they have health issues. Now, thankfully, they're still independent and living on their own. But, as time goes by, they're going to need to be looked after. And, in fact, we have, a situation with my father-in-law coming up next week that we're concerned about, and we'll get news on that. But it happens, and you have to make sure that your retirement plan can accommodate such a need. So yeah, it's very prevalent. Even Bryce a moment ago added that he's looking at a situation like that in his family. So got to be able to plan for these things. And JB, I want to mention another area that I have seen that could cause a problem, and it kind of goes hand in hand with taking care of parents. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily taking care of your children, but children that come back home, for various reasons. We know in the last 10 years they've gone off to college, and it's been very hard for them to find a job, but now the economy's getting better. But I've seen a lot of situations where parents have been, I don't know how to say this politely or politically correct, but I think they've been just too easy on their children and not cutting that umbilical cord.
Right.
You got to at some point in time, you got to say, kids, hey, we did our job. Now it's on you.
No, you're absolutely right.
And that can drain a lot of finances. And in fact, just this week, I had a client come in and he wants to retire, and he's got a son who lives with him, and another situation like I just described. Well, that's just a few situations that can get in the way of retirement. It certainly isn't everything that could happen. I want to thank you again for joining us today. Hopefully some of these issues we brought up got you to thinking a little bit, and I'm sorry they all seem to be negative, but that's unfortunately just kind of the way it ran. As always, I want you to make sure you obtain the proper help and work with a qualified, competent, educated, and experienced retirement plan specialist. Make sure you're aware of and understand all of your options, and make sure your planning is set up the absolute best way for your unique, specific situation to keep your retirement nest egg safe and sound. As we wrap up, I'll ask this. Do you know what question to ask to assure that your financial decisions are based on facts and logic and not emotion and opinions? Don't sit on the fence because the market has been doing very well. Contact us for a 3-step, no-obligation review and let us help you determine if you're making sound financial decisions based on fact and logic, not myth and misconception. Identify money that could be falling through the cracks and help assure your financial decisions are right for you. Call us at 336-391-3409 and ask about upcoming educational workshop or email us through thewealthguardians.com. See you next week.